funds I have, my goal is to just keep that in play and just have as many of those going on as possible.
You put a property under contract for 70 grand. You find a buyer on the property for 90 grand. Same thing you were doing ahead of time. I go to Peter and I'm like, hey, here's the property. It's under contract. Here's the buyer ready to go. This is the ARV, like this is the numbers. I want to know what you're looking at and what you care about. And then how intensive is the underwriting? Like, what is the burden on the wholesaler to provide you with the information that you need? And then essentially what's happening is on the day of closing, you're providing the 70 grand. They close on the property. They turn around, they sell it for 90 grand, and you're getting less than 1%. So less than $900 of the 20 grand that they just made. They're cutting you a check for $900. It's going to you. And the other 19,000 and some change is coming straight to them. They literally showed up with no money down. And it protects them from getting their hand slapped or getting fined by going through the wholesaling process, which is now illegal.
Right.
Yeah. So what do they have to show up with you for you to, like, how are you underwriting that deal? And how labor intensive is it for the wholesaler?
This morning, case in point, I had someone reach out to me that hadn't done a deal with me before, and somebody else referred them over to me. They are in Wisconsin, and they have a deal under contract. Let's just use the same number for 70, and they have an in buyer for 90. He's never done a double close before, only kind of heard about it. So he came to me with like, do you have to do a credit check? Do you have to see previous deals I've done? And the great thing about this is I don't care about any of that. Like none of that is going to affect the deal that you have on the table right now. If you have a deal and if you have a buyer, you could be making $5,000, $50,000, $100,000. I hope you're making, as a wholesaler, I hope you're making as much as possible because I know how exciting that is. But my whole thing is I have a simple link. I have a website you can go to and click on and submit a lead, or I can send over a link to anybody. And it just asks for general information, your info, email, phone number, and then the address of the property that you have under contract. And then the biggest piece to it is whoever you're doing the closing with, we'll just call it the settlement company because it could be an attorney in one state, could be a title company in another. General information. You just submit it, click it, comes through, pops up in my CRM. And typically when it's the first time I've worked with you, we'll hop on a quick call. I'll answer any questions, walk them through the process. And usually it only takes that one time. And then anytime after that, you're submitting that, it comes over. And then I get in contact with the closing company and just start things going on my end. I ask for a finalized HUD as you get closer to that closing date. For the exact amount that's going to be needed to fund that first deal, the AB side. So 70,000 probably turns into about 72,000 because most wholesalers cover the closing costs for the seller. So whatever that exact amount is, we get that lined up. And then I just let that closing company know I will fund it once everybody's signed the first transaction. They've signed for the second transaction, and then the in buyer's funds are in escrow because I don't go through the steps of putting myself in like a lien position or recording an extra deed because that just bottlenecks the whole process. So on my end, I just make sure everything's lined up. I'm in communication with the closing company, and then everybody's signed, in buyer's funds are in escrow, so it's committed. And then I have a process that I verify wiring instructions through. I use a third party for that because that's another piece to it as well. You just want to make sure that that's all tight as far as wiring instructions for myself for the closing company. And then on the day of closing, this guy's closing is going to be on Thursday. Once everything's there and everything's kind of checked off my list, I just wait for the closing attorney to say, hey, everybody sign. Here's a copy of the signed closing statements, and here's a transcription of the in buyer's funds in our escrow account. And then I just wire it over, and then it just bam, bam, back to back. So it's just literally same day. Usually the money's gone out and back within about 2 hours, 2.5 hours is the average for me. Sometimes it's quicker. I did do one this morning that everything was lined up on Friday, but we got to 5 o'clock. Attorneys usually close it down at 4:30 on a Friday. So nobody was closing, nobody was funding, nobody was recording. At 9 a.m. I sent it over, and at 9:45 I got the funding and everything back for it. So it was quick, it was fast. But that's the beauty of it on that end for the double closing as well, is it's not tied up in a project that's going to take 60, 90 days, 6 months, that sort of thing. Those guys get higher returns than I do, I'm sure. But then you have to underwrite it. You have to see what's going on. The market can change at any point in time. Housing market, total US economy, that sort of thing. So the funds I have, my goal is to just keep that in play and just have as many of those going on as possible.